Can you say the word mafia in your town?
Yeah, well, see, the thing with mafia is we have this idea that mafia is, the um, guy in a pinstripe suit and a hat, but it means more in Italian. It means like any type of corruption. So like you go for a job interview and they say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't take you, and then you realize that it's like the cousin or whatever got the job instead. You say, oh, it's like a mafia. So we use they use mafia a lot, like in a very general sense as well. So you can use it, yeah.
So
it's
what's
like it covers. Yeah. No, she's just a fascist.
Said so calmly.
No, but literally, like her party is the remnants of the Italian fascist party, like Brothers of Italy.
Her first public speech, I believe, was in one of Mussolini's towns that he constructed with Mussolini's granddaughter.
Yeah,
and then soon that going, oh yeah, she's great.
But it's like there was a commemoration called the Foibe, which was a horrible period where they during the fascist regime, there was these like sinkholes, and what the fascists would do is they would round up partisans and throw them into throw them and sometimes their families into these sinkholes.
What, dead or alive?
No. Well, actually, sometimes alive. They tie them together and just push the first one, and the others would fall in, and then you'd fall down to the bottom, and you'd end up with broken bones or whatever, and you just die at the bottom. So when the fascists lost, when the regime ended, the partisans ended up rounding up fascists and their families and doing the same to them, which, an eye for an eye sort of thing. Now, in Italy during the Civil War, it was really, really, really grim, really horrible. But Meloni came out recently, just a few days ago, and she posted on Facebook, I think it was, or on Twitter, a story of a girl who was thrown into one of these foibe, one of these holes.
Recently?
No. During, I think it was in 1943. So it was a commemoration of this event where people were thrown in. And she posted on social media the story of a young girl who ended up being thrown into this. Of course, she didn't put in the context that this was a girl who was a member of the fascist party. And
it wasn't optional, was it? Was it optional to be a member of the fascist party?
No, it was optional. She actually because what happened was in 1943 when the Italian state switched over to join the Allies, there was a hunt for the fascists, and this girl was believed to be a fascist, and she said, yeah, I'm a fascist, I fully support the fascist regime. And the partisans decided, okay, well, we know how to deal with that. And she was, I don't agree with throwing people into a bloody hole, but that was the consequence of that, because I think her father was her father was a member of the party as well, and it was she said, yeah, I support the party as well. And she was thrown. If she had said no, she said, no, I'm against the regime, she would have been okay, as far as I know. But Meloni held her up as, a young person standing up for her beliefs. She didn't mention anything about fascism or anything. And Meloni criticized the partisans for throwing people in, which is correct. But you also have to remember that the fascists did horrible things as well, which Meloni is ignoring.
Of course, Yeah, that's just the nature of things. It's no different to what we've got over here. They just pick and choose and cherry pick. I mean, I've said it on this program about not a million times, but a fair number of times. When you use the word invasion, which Cameron and Braverman have used to describe migrants, you're literally taking language out of Mein Kampf. That's terrible, and it's like everywhere within Europe at the moment. I told you about my meeting with one of Viktor Orban's right-hand men.
No, tell us about that.
I can't say too much of how I met him for a variety of reasons, but I can say I met one of them, high rankers, and it's for a job interview. And we're all sat around a dinner table, and I finally get to meet the guy. So I've been introduced to managers and so forth at this point, but I hadn't been introduced to him. And he turns up, and you can see the atmosphere changed. And he sat down, seemed really polite, spoke fluent English, really interesting guy. At least that was my initial impression. And he went, I don't know, we're half an hour in, and we've been talking about football, we've been talking about all sorts, and Hungary and my thoughts of Hungary and how I like it. And all of a sudden he goes, I feel really sorry for you guys in England. I said, what do you mean? And he went, well, London, is a bit of a mess at the moment, isn't it? I said, well, what part? So it's just before the calm winds. And he going, well, you've only got a Jew and a Muslim to choose from. And it seems that London's gone to pot. So there'd been an incident the day before, right? Which again I can't talk too much about. But basically, I've been told to remove stuff from social media because if I didn't, there's a good chance I'd be chased out of the country. So just to set the precedent of what I'm in and aware of at this point. So I'm going, I was very British in my response. And I said, no, that's not the problem. I said, that's not the issue that you seem to have at the moment. I said, the issue that you're concerned about is extremism. That's the issue that you're having. And that, we should all be concerned with any level of extremism. And I said, there's extremism in every single group. I said, there's extremism within Christianity. Look at some of the stuff that's taking place over the United States with extremist religious groups. So it's not that. That's not your issue. Your issue is extremism. Everyone went fucking silent because I don't think people normally talk to him like that. And he paused and I went, okay. And that's it. That's all he said. But there was a nod there. And it was just, apparently he wanted to employ me. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, I ain't working for you. Fuck that. Total twat. Who says that within half an hour of meeting someone fucking randomly? Do you know what I mean? So when I was asking you about the Mafia stuff, when I was living in Sicily, I said it out loud. I said the word Mafia out loud to friends. And because it hadn't come up in conversation. I hadn't brought it up. It was just a natural flow of the conversation. I think we were talking about The Godfather having been filmed near to where I was staying and other locations that you could go to. And I said, well, is Mafia an issue over here? And I went, what? And they were like, don't say that word out loud in public. So I was like, really? And I thought that for a second, I was like, are they joking? No. They were like, you don't say that word in public, which is fascinating because, I mean, it sounds like in the north it's a joke, and down the south it's like...
No, it's quite serious. No, and I understand why maybe in Sicily, because there has been, over the last number of years, last number of decades, an attempt to take back from the Mafia, to take back, like, for example, land. So there's been land that's been reclaimed, and now it's turned into farmland that is run by charities, and you can buy vegetables, fruit and vegetables. It's all, ecological. It's all by organic and stuff like this. And it's about taking back from the Mafia, and it's been a bit of a success story. While we tend to look at Sicily as, home of the Mafia, and that's really where it sort of began. But it's sort of moved out there, and it's even moved in some cases to the north of Italy. But in Sicily, it seems that in the late 90s, I think early 2000s, there was a massive pushback against them because people realized, look, we can't start businesses here. We can't attract investment. We can't see infrastructure being put. A big problem for the south of Italy was that, money was being pumped in to build infrastructure, whatever. And then the Mafia were winning the contracts because of the connections to politicians and whatever. And you'd literally have bridges to nowhere. You'd have a bridge that would arrive halfway across a ravine or whatever and stop there because the money had finished. Or you had... substandard materials being used, and this really undermined investment in the south. For example, there were cases of you go to Sicily, set up a business, and within a few days, somebody would come around and say, okay, you need to pay the pizza. You have to pay the protection money, and if you don't, well, you won't have a business anymore.
They'll smash it.
Yeah, they'll burn it down.
Fire.
And if you pay to us, you'll be protected from the others. So there would be gangs where if you don't pay to us, or we pay us, and we'll protect you from the other gangs. It's not just we'll protect you from us; we'll protect you from other gangs. And every month you'd have to pay €1,000 or €2,000 to the Mafia for protection, either from them or from others. That's sort of ended now. I don't know how much it's still in place, but it seems to be more in other parts of Italy. But in general, in Sicily, I think they've really turned things around because the people have stood up. People have said, no, we don't want any more of this. we're being undermined by that. In the same way, we would hope that people would stand up to the Tories. Just enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Well, it seems like it's heading that way. I think. Can we call them Tories anymore? Or do we have to call them UKIP?
I think, no. It's amazing how, like, you saw there, Nigel Farage dancing with Priti Patel. Like, have they not? Are they not UKIP anymore? Like, are they not UKIP at this stage?
If UKIP are now the Tories, does that mean Labour are Conservatives?
Maybe.
I've got 5 policies here that I can ask you and see if you can tell me if they're UKIP, Conservative, or both.
Go ahead.
Do UKIP and the Tories have the same policy on the Australian immigration system?
Yes.
Correct. Deregulation of planning.
I would say that's both a UKIP and Tory policy.
Correct. Shrinking the civil service.
Both.
Correct. Climate change policy is bad and needs to be scaled back.
Until recently, I would say just UKIP, but I'm edging towards both.
Correct.
Both of them, yes.
Yep. Leaving ECHR.
Definitely. Definitely UKIP, but see, it's hard to know whether it's a Tory policy or it's just something that a few Tories are banging on about. Because Suella Braverman has been talking about it, but I don't know if it's official policy because Rishi Sunak hasn't said anything about it. So I would say just UKIP at the moment.
Correct. The climate change stuff. I was digging around the OBR report because I was looking at Rishi's 5 pledges and whether or not he completed them. And the OBR report was fascinating because I think it explains why they've done their policies. So the OBR report is going, we're in a lot of deep doo-doo and we need a long-term plan. And what does Rishi bring out? Literally at the conference, long-term. That's our goal. That's our thing. So you go, okay. And then it says we need to get everyone working that's on benefits. Well, okay, Jeremy Hunt comes out and says, right, we're going to get everyone that's capable of working to work. End of. And going, okay, so that's another thing. And then I was looking at the very bottom. It was really interesting, actually. In the document, I searched for key terms. Do you know how many times Brexit came up?
0.
3.
Okay.
But it admits that Brexit's been a problem. But that's it, which is fascinating in itself because you're going, well, if it's a problem, then what is your solution to that problem? But it doesn't go into any detail about how to resolve it. It's just that it's an issue and it places it up there with Ukraine and COVID, which it is. I mean, it's caused that level of damage. But the OBR report at the very end talked about cars and it said that we take in 25 billion in petrol tax, which blew my mind. And they're going, oh my God, if we lose that because everyone's going into electric vehicles, then how do we recoup it? Tax the wealthy? Tax the wealthy?
Yeah, maybe.
No, can't do that. That's silly.
Remember, the wealth has to trickle down.
Breadcrumb economics. Have some crumbs. Well done. It's too much for me. Have a bit of fucking horrendous. But it's 25 billion. So I reckon Sunak has extended that. Not because of net zero. I don't like giving them any credit, but it seems like they are going in the right direction with getting us down. I can't, you can argue they could go quicker, fine, but it's going down. And we could also complain that, if you look at the last 300 years, we pumped out way more than China ever will. China's got 53% renewable electric. They beat their target by 2 years.
No, a big concern now in Europe is how there's going to be a flood of Chinese electric vehicles, and they're not low quality ones; they're really high quality ones, like Tesla level ones.
Are they?
Yeah. No. I've been watching a lot of stuff online, YouTube videos about. There's one called Fully Charged podcast. Guy from Crichton from Red Dwarf, he hosts it.
You serious?
Yeah.
We're getting them on.
Yeah, we'll have to. So he hosts this Fully Charged show, and they do events and stuff like this. But they've been doing a lot of reviews into these electric vehicles and comparing them to, European vehicles. And they say it's going to be terrible for Volkswagen, for example, because they're really behind the curve.
Europe is.
Yeah, Europe is because we've been playing. I think a big problem for European manufacturers was that they were pushing back against these changes over the last 10 years. And the Chinese have actually gone, okay, let's invest everything we can into electric vehicles, into the technology, into improving them. And now you're getting electric vehicle. There's a Chinese electric car which will be sold for less than £10,000. Now, it's not a big car. It's a small car. It's about the size of a Clio or something like that. But it's like £10,000 for an electric car. Like about 5 or 6 years ago, this would have been impossible. So, they can flood the market with this, and this is going to be really damaging for European manufacturers.
Amazing what you can do with slave labor.
Yeah, but it's also, if this is what we're achieving now, what's another 5 years? So it's going to be really disruptive. And as you said, it's £25 billion brought in through revenue on taxes on petrol and diesel. So how are you going to recoup that? You'll have to look for it somewhere else.
Well, you got to bring a new system of taxes. I mean, it makes sense to do the UBI stuff as well.
Yeah.
The more I research it, and you can see that we're just getting so advanced in our technology that you don't need a huge workforce. Or we're getting to that stage. We are getting to that stage where so much is just going to be replaced by robotics. It then makes you go, well, what should we be doing? Not maths, Rishi. Not maths, you prat. I mean, I've been faffing around with ChatGPT. I've got mates that are using it, and they're all going, we can use it for coding. You just give a relatively vague instruction, and you can start to code and build computer games, for example, or images, which is nuts. But anyway, we're sidetracking from the environmentally friendly. Like, I did watch, this is interesting as well. I remember watching, and I hate to admit it, an episode of Top Gear when they went to China, and they were showing the cars, and they were going, the engineering's shit.
This Mini, a Minging.
Well, the Mingy, it should be, yeah.
It is the most tragic-looking thing. It's like somebody has described a Mini to someone on the telephone, all sent a really blurry fax.
Yeah.
Right, there we are. That's what it looks like.
Like, they'll clearly make a copy of a Mini, but it isn't as good as an actual Mini. Their engineering ability. So they've caught up. Maybe they watched that Top Gear episode and went, fuck you, class.
But when was that Top Gear episode?
Must have been a while ago. So he's been off Top Gear for, could have been a decade. So in 10 years, they've caught up.
Yeah. No, I remember stories about businesses. There was a funny story. I spoke to an Italian person about this, where they said they once went to China to meet with a supplier. This was after the supplier had come to Italy for a meeting to discuss whatever. And when they went to China to meet with the supplier, they noticed that the offices were very similar to theirs. What happened was the Chinese delegation had come to Italy and had copied everything, even the location of the toilets. They had copied everything and then replicated it in China. Now, I think that was the case about 10 years ago, but if you look at some of the electric vehicles coming out, they are superior to what we have in Europe. And, if it comes to cost and it comes to quality, MG, for example, the MG4 is one of the best electric cars out at the moment. And it's for sale for about I think about £23,000. Above the average, of course, but you're getting a vehicle that, you can, if you have solar panels on your roof, you can charge at home, you can charge at the supermarket, and you don't pay road tax, you pay less in insurance. And then, of course, as petrol and diesel are more expensive than before at the moment, you're paying less for fuel as well.
Do you have a
That's
car?
the way it is. Yes, I do.
What do you got?
I got a Kia. It's diesel. It's about 12 years old.
You polluter.
Yes. But
electric?
when it's finished, when it stops working, I'm going to replace it with probably an MG.
Well, electric.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It seems like the way forward. I've been trying to go. It was interesting. I convinced my dad's not. He's a bit environmentalist. I'll give him some credit. He's a bit not. But when I pointed out to him he could put solar panels on, they bring in an income. Bam, bam. That was, and we got him doing that 18 years ago. Because we're like, this is a moneymaker. It turns your house from a consumer of your funds to a producer, to a revenue earner, which is quite unique. I mean, you've never been able to do that with houses before, but that's like a huge turnaround. Been up there for 18 years, and I think we've had to change the batteries once. But you're going, look how much of an environmental standard. And you're also going, how much benefit would that have had to the whole of the UK if everyone had done that? There was a study done in 2014 for London that said if every single house that could have a solar panel on it did, we'd generate 5 gigawatts, and we need 70 to run London.
There you go.
It's
and
crazy.
It's free. In a
free.
sense, it's free. Yeah, you pay for the installation, and you pay for the material, but after that, it's all free. And
Pays for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even think that included if you put it on rail stations, public bus stations, if you put them over car parks. I'm going. I mean, you're getting to that point where you'd be able to start influencing the climate in London with that amount of reflection, either absorbing it and using it, or pumping it back out into the sky. And it's free, as you said. And I don't understand why you wouldn't do that, other than the Tories panicking. I mean, it says a lot, doesn't it? Rishi is just a mass person. He doesn't give a crap about the environment, because if you're going to pass a policy like that, and it's literally because you can't figure out a way of increasing your tax revenue, and that's what you're panicking about, whilst the world is literally burning.
Why is Rishi Sunak an MP? Why did he become an MP? Why did he become Prime Minister? Because
power.
I keep asking myself, but I don't even know if it's about power. I think it's just about enriching his family, because his father-in-law is it the founder, co-founder, or one of the top wigs in Infosys, and they're standing to benefit from some of Rishi Sunak's policies. They're operating in Russia, I believe.
Yep.
And no sanctions have been imposed upon them. So, like, what is he there for? Like, he's not there because he cares about people, because he's not pushing policies to help people. He's not there because he needs the money. Okay. So why is he there? I honestly don't know.
You don't think he could? I mean, I watched House of Cards, and there is a line in there.
Money is the McMansion in Sarasota that starts falling apart after 10 years. Power is the old stone building that stands for centuries.
And I think there's an element, of, and you see it a lot in history with a lot of people that rose to power very rapidly, that part of the reason was to be remembered forever. Once you're prime minister, in theory, you'll be remembered forever. First Hindu prime minister. That is, that's a huge thing to put in, because you're the first.
Yeah.
I think it's Disraeli as well, who was the first Jewish prime minister for Britain. So again, you go remembered, more likely to be remembered forever. I'm sure there's quotes from Caesar, and I think there's a few quotes in Homer.
Liz Truss, first lettuce as prime minister, or cabbage? No, lettuce. Yes.
How did she go? That was so disturbing as well. Let's go on to the Tory conference. So much disturbing stuff. Farage dancing with Patel. I don't even know where to begin with that. There was so much garbage.
Was he invited, or did he just turn up?
He turned up, I think, is what he said. I remember seeing him on camera being like, this is the first one I've been to since, I think, 1983, 87. So you're going, wow, why are you here? What are you up to? And then he was surrounded by people. And
he was the most popular person at the convention, at the conference.
Do you think he was more popular than Rishi?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. There was a poll done of Conservatives supporters. Who did they want for Prime Minister? First was, of course, Rishi, because he's in the job. Second was Penny Mordaunt, and third was Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage isn't even a member, and a third. It was only like 13%, but that's him just turning up and getting 13% of the vote, like ahead of people who
there taking photos with him. Kids, people from minority groups taking photos with him.
That was quite disturbing.
I couldn't tell if they didn't know anything about him, or they just saw that. Do you know what I mean? You could see someone who's famous, and you go, "Oh, he's a famous person, so I'll go and get my photo taken with him," because everyone else is. There's always that possibility.
Yeah. Or you see a crowd around some guy, and you go, "Well, I'll go over to see." I don't know who it is, but it's like if you're at Disneyland and you see a long queue for a ride, you say, "Well, that must be a good one," so I'll join that queue.
Hey, man, if the line's this long, it's gotta be good.
Get bent.
I just think of Goofy. Seems so apt with that group. But it's disturbing. And it's like, there's rumours now kicking around that he'd run... I mean, I think someone asked him directly when he joined the Conservative Party now. I think he said it's more in line to my views. And you're going, he's never been elected. Look at the damage and power. But I'm also going, you know what? Go and join him, because UKIP never got off the ground. And I'm seeing that you're just doing the exact same thing with the exact same policies that the majority of the population don't want.
But didn't he leave UKIP because it had become too extreme?
That's what he said, but he just dumps people for... he clearly just uses you until you're no longer useful. Because he must have left a load of people that he claimed he was friends with in there and just dumped them.
Yeah.
Because how many of that lot from UKIP went over to the Brexit Party and Reform? And both Brexit and Reform slightly upgraded in the number of people they had. I think UKIP's got Neil Hamilton still as a leader. Yes. Absolutely useless. I think the Rejoin EU party just overtook them on TikTok for number of subscribers, which is interesting.
Also, the Reform UK, Rejoin EU party beat UKIP. Or no, it was Reform UK, I think they beat at the last by-election.
They've been Greens, Lib Dems, Reform, UKIP on several elections with no budget. But people keep saying, oh, you're useless. It's like, political parties don't happen overnight, and you can have up and down. I mean, look at the Conservative Party. Look at the downturn they're on right now. And you're going, they're useless, they're a waste of space as a political party? I mean, come on. So it's really interesting to see that they're having these victories. Politics is never an upward trend. It's always
up and down, yes.
Yeah. But it is interesting to see that they beat a number of those parties. You know, they've lost to Count Binface. Farage lost to a dolphin. It happens. It's embarrassing. It's not great,
but I don't think he wants to run as an MP unless he's given like a safe seat or something. But I think what he wants to do is influence the party from the outside, or to be some sort of consultant within the party. I think that's what he wants. He wants the attention. He wants the influence. He wants people coming to him saying, Nigel, what should we do? What should we do? And I think that's what he wants. If you notice with Reform UK, he hasn't really stepped in and like he's left it to Richard Tice, but the party isn't making any inroads anywhere. You know, they keep talking about how, well, we're at 8% or 9%, but you're not really making any difference, because you can be pumped by Talk TV and GB News all you want, but they're not influencing the Conservatives. It seems to be Farage who's influencing the Conservatives more than Reform UK.
Couldn't you argue that they're taking votes away from the Conservative Party, and if they're in swing states, you know, if a few hundred here or there? I looked at Uxbridge. It was really interesting looking at the number of small parties, because they only won by 495 votes.
Yeah.
And there were minority people standing on ULEZ who took 200 here, 200 there, 1,000 here, and you're going, that scrapes away and actually makes it even harder. And they would have to consider taking on board some of the policies and going, right, if they're talking about ULEZ, and that's an issue. Because that's what a lot of people cited as a reason for Rishi going into this sort of anti-environmental, keep the petrol cars coming policy, was the victory in ULEZ. But I've looked at the OBR report and I'm going, no, it's a tax. And he's a numbers guy. I've said it before. I know people that knew him at uni, and they all said he was a loner and quite a boring person and not very good at table football. And so you're going, okay, this seems to all add up. There's a pattern here that you can start to see emerging. And it's just, he's the numbers guy. I mean, he's even said, I want everyone learning maths. And it's like, if you look at educational policy, when they're going, we've now got a AI that can code and do all the mathematics, then do you really need us, or do you want us to be creative? And then sort of the computers doing the hard work, the coding from computers doing the hard work, and we being the creative outlet. That's where most educational academics seem to be leading. They're saying you need to do soft skills, not this old school hard stuff.
Yeah, it's like trying to go back to let's making things by hand when we have machines to do it. And it's the same with the AI. I think like the AI is going, but it's not even just in mathematics. But it's like I've seen videos online where you had a lawyer proofread a legal document, and then they had an AI do it, and the AI was able to find more legal mistakes. Not talking about spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. I'm talking about legal problems. Was able to do it better than the lawyer. And you know, if we're at that stage, you need to be investing in the arts. You need to be investing in something that the AI can't really recreate to the same level. Which we
do so well.
Yes.
Which Britain does so well. Look at all the musicians that we pump out. It's crazy. That level of it. I mean, you go, are we riding on the fact American culture is a global? Arguably, we were actually first. We were bigger on the media stage than the Americans at one stage, because we had Charlie Chaplin and we were producing films. So yeah, you're right. I mean, music, the bands, the films that we produce, the art, the fashion, we're world leaders. And this lot don't take it seriously.
No, Thatcher thought it was all about the financial services. But what the Tories today believe in, I don't know. Like, what do they hold up as? Rishi Sunak mentions AI and he talks about new technologies, but you need to attract people. You need to attract investment. And with Brexit, you're of course blocking that off. There doesn't seem to be a vision at all. And I'm a bit concerned also with the Labour Party, because the Labour Party are not presenting any vision either. They're saying, like, we're not the Tories. They're not saying we're going to, like, at least, you know, if you look at some of the regions, like there yesterday, I think it was the mayor of Manchester, no, not Manchester, Liverpool. They brought in a new bus service, like, where they're going to give the I think it's the local government will give out franchises, but they're on the condition that you provide services on routes that are non-profitable. This is a good change. This is something that's going to help people, but it's a small thing. It's not a huge vision. But I'm concerned that there's no real vision on either side. The Tories don't have any real vision, and the Labour Party don't. The Labour Party just seem to be, we're not the Tories. Vote for us, we're not the Tories. But that's not enough.
I would turn around and say, historically, you don't do your manifesto until the thing's announced. And then you just continue to research and listen and listen and listen. I mean, they've got their lead in the polls. Conservatives will go up a little bit. They'll also go down a little bit. And that's the way of things. I don't think anything's going to change because everyone's so hacked off with them on so many levels. They've failed on, so they failed in Afghanistan. They failed in COVID. They failed on Brexit. What have they actually succeeded at? And then they go around blaming. They blame us. We put them in charge and they blame us, which is just nuts. Like, and that's all they do. That's their go-to thing. And I don't see how they can really get out of it. But for Labour, I'd probably turn around and say, look, we've got the conference coming up, which is next week. That'll be interesting to see if they bring out some policies in that. I would say they might give overarching policies, but nothing specific. That would be my lean. And then it'll be when the election's declared, bam, there's a big manifesto, which all of us YouTubers will just go through with a fine tooth comb and go, you can look at the website and see some of the policies on there. I mean, you know, I've looked at the education policy because it's a bit of a passion of mine and gone, it's crap. There's nothing in there. It's just crap. It's, you know, there's nothing in there that's going to do anything for anyone. And it feels a bit numbery because they had the private school thing, didn't they? With the private schools where they were going, oh, we're going to tax all the private schools. And I'm going, okay, good. We'll get rid of that institution because it doesn't seem fit for purpose in the modern era. And then they backtracked and they've gone, well, if it's registered as charity, then it's fine. I've been in that system. It doesn't work as a charity. It works on the league tables. It works on how your A-level results are going to go. It doesn't care about you as a person, or at least that's my anecdotal experience and from what I've heard from other people. It's obviously there's exceptions to every story, so I'm putting all those little caveats in. But generally, I'd say what they're really interested in is how it promotes the school because it's run like a business, even if it says it's a charity. You know, I'm not aware of too many schools that go against that. Maybe the Steiner schools seem to go against that policy. I'd say that they're an exception, but in general, it's just a money game. So it's run like a business, and so you're like, well, the primary focus should be on the education of the student and their welfare. That's it, but
it's not.
It's not. And you look at Finland, and you look at the way their schools are set up over there, and I think it is a blanket ban over there for blanket ban for private schools. And you look at their state schools, and it's like, wow. I think I was geeking out on Norway and looking at I think they spend double per student than we do over here in Norway.
But I would never see Britain eliminating private education. There's also the class issue, I think, as well. No,
absolutely. But then, so I was talking to someone about this the other day. You've got this system that's entrenched that's really difficult to get out. So if you looked at our tax system, there's a really interesting article in the Financial Times on it. And you start to realize how it works. And if you're around people that have told you how it works, then it confirms what was said in the Times. But it's literally like, once you've reached a certain wealth threshold and you figure out the system, it's totally encasing you and protecting you. And historically, that's, you know, no different. You look back in 1812, 1815 at the Corn Laws. A bunch of farmers are in the House of Lords. They don't want corn to get cheap after the Napoleonics, so they stick on tariffs. It's not about the people, it's about their profits. And you're going, well, I don't see any difference with the landlords.
Yeah.
We've got 122 landlords in the Conservative Party, and they don't want big reforms. But you look at the landlord system and the freehold system, and it's set up like it's like out the feudal system. And this is the thing that gets me with all of it. I'm going, let's say you have a movement and you've got the youth and they're not going to the Conservative Party and they're going in a socialist direction because they're going, well, the capitalist system doesn't work. And, you know, we're starting to see more and more people come out and say they're communist. on YouTube and social media, and you get why, because they're going, well, the system's failed. This is why no one's going to the Conservative Party. No one's having kids. No one's having money. And so you go in this direction where you're going, one, I see if they go for the UKIP stance, they're doomed. And they already have. And the youth aren't going with it. And socially, they're not going with it. And financially, they're not being benefited by it. So why would you go with it? And you're going and looking at the issues that have taken place in society. I find that we're going to have this big clash where you've got this group wanting change, but you've got this embedded wealth culture and with all these laws behind them, and they will just funnel millions into someone who's going to protect their own vested interest.
That's how it's been happening for a long time now. You have multimillionaire donors giving money to the Conservative Party, and the Conservatives are turning around and giving them whatever they want. Like when you brought up landlords, there was a vote in 2013 that homes should be fit for human habitation, and the Tory landlords voted against it. So that was just a minimum standard. It wasn't that they had to be a very high standard, just a minimum standard, and the Tories in Parliament voted against that because they're landlords. They don't want any change. So my big problem with politics, of course, is money. As long as there's money in it, you're going to have certain interests having more influence over the voters, because you can go out and vote for a policy, but if somebody else comes along and pumps money into a political party, they're going to have a say. They're going to be able to decide policy, not you.
That's it. And you've got a lot of power once you're in Parliament. But we talked about Labour. There was loads of talk about proportional representation. The Labour membership wants proportional representation, and Starmer goes,
no.
I don't want it, even if it's to our advantage. And you go, reform the House of Lords then and make that proportional. No. And you go,
well, at first he had said that he was going to abolish the House of Lords. Then he said, well, we're going to actually reform it. And now I don't know if it's still on the table. Absolute
power is absolutely corrupting.
Yeah.
And he can see that he's in, or he thinks he is. I mean, May dropped a 20-point lead, didn't she?
Was the dementia tax that she had brought? It's like she was leading, and then she brought in the dementia tax, and then it was about forcing people who have elderly people to pay for their own social care. I think it was. So it was at the last minute that the Tories brought in 2017. I think it was. Just before the election in 2017, Theresa May was leading in the polls. She said, okay, let's have our general election now. And then she brought in a policy where, I believe it was, where elderly people would end up having to sell their homes to pay for social care. And of course, you almost saw a Jeremy Corbyn government at that stage. Massive drop in the polls for the Tories. But then they recovered it in 2019 with Get Brexit Done.
Don't attack your base, and their base is over 60.
Yeah.
And yeah, they still don't get it. But again, as you said, let's see what Starmer comes up with. It's waiting for that manifesto to come out. I mean, there's old ones that you can look at, and there's like pledges and everything else that's been put onto the website. So you get a rough idea. But again, we can also see that he's quite flexible, and he's going, well, that's not going to work, or we can't do that. Or, I assume with the private schools, they'll tax the private ones, but the charities, they won't. And it's in part because they've realized they can't do a big shift, because they wouldn't be able to take the number of students that would come out of the private sector, is the argument. But you also go, these people are already quite rich. Is $2,000 really anything to them? Or is it like 20 quid to the rest of us? Do you know what I mean? It may be 20 quid's too much for us.
No, but it is, it's just, we're going to impose VAT on them, but they're businesses. Like, the argument, of course, is, well, if you're going to have thousands of students move from private education into state schools, but I don't see that really happening. I think it's just another Project Fear. I think you will see some, but if you're already sending your kids to private schools, you're going to make, you've made a decision to sacrifice on other things. Maybe, you say, okay, we're not going on holiday 3 times a year. We'll go on holiday once a year, or we'll cut back on something else. If that's what you're doing. I'm not talking about really rich people. I'm just talking about people who are making a sacrifice. An extra few thousand, you're going to make another sacrifice because your priority is sending the kids to private schools. You're not going to pull them out.
I was out with friends the other day, and there were a couple of people I didn't know, and some of these friends were saying that they had to leave war-torn areas when they were growing up, and how difficult it was, and the hardships of it. And then one of the guys that I didn't know piped in and said, Yeah, hardships are so difficult. This year we're only going on one skiing holiday. You're like, what?
We're going to Cortina, not Switzerland. It's so depressing.
Oh, the little fiddle. But it's like, I don't think an extra $2,000 is going to make. Is it going to make much of a difference if you're already earning that level? I mean, I think the average fee is 10K. It was interesting because going back to the Tory conference and Mog coming out and saying, "Oh, we want people back on. We're protecting motorists," and Rishi saying, "We're protecting motorists," and you're going, and there's that argument, and we're protecting the poor are being helped here, and you're sort of going, okay, so how much does it cost to run a car? So the average use of a car in the UK is 12,000 miles. So you go, right, that's about 1,400 at current petrol prices per year. And then you start adding on MOT and tax and insurance and breakdown cover if you want it, and you probably should. Then you're going parking. Parking probably costs most of us about $1,000 a year. And you're going, you add that all up without buying the car. Because this ban that they're bringing in is only for selling of brand new cars. It's not anything to do with second-hand or anything, which will be kicking around for years. They're basically saying for an extra 5 years, we're going to sell these brand new petrol cars, which poor people can't afford. So you're going, that's 6K to maintain and run a car like that. Plus, what, anywhere between 10 and 25 for
the car itself.
For a brand new car? And you're going, well, this isn't about the poor then. What are you talking about?
It's about protecting themselves or protecting their friends. Or pretending. See, this is the big thing. It's about pretending to be on the side of the poor when in reality they're on the side of the rich. It's the same with when it comes to, for example, welfare. They'll say, we need to punish people who are, gaming the system. When they're not actually gaming the system, they're actually relying on benefits. We need to punish people who are not working, people who can't work, or who are being offered jobs that don't actually, help them make ends meet. Like, somebody could be on benefits and they're saying, okay, here's a job that you need to spend like 2 hours every day traveling to, and you're going to earn like less than minimum wage or something like that. Like, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. You're not going to be able to pay your bills, and you're going to be away from your family. So you're going to end up having to find somebody to look after the kids or whatever. And it's not feasible. So you're going to have to say no. But under what they're pushing is, well, we're going to force you to do it because we need to recoup all these costs of people, on benefits. Instead of actually looking at tax evasion or tax avoidance, closing the loopholes on tax avoidance and clamping down on tax evasion. But they don't do that because, well, it doesn't serve their interests. Because some of them are probably avoiding tax themselves.
Rishi probably is.
Yes.
He's probably paying 22-23% tax. Whereas a doctor
he's paying less tax probably than his cleaner.
Yeah. No problem with that, though.
No.
It's
cleaners.
shocking. I mean, I want to talk a little bit about America if we've got a bit of time, which I think we do. But we're in competition with the EU. They've said no to the electrical vehicle tariff coming down. I think a lot of naivety is being said by Labour and the Conservatives, thinking in 25 we can renegotiate. But that's not what the EU have said. It's not a renegotiation.
No, it's a review.
It's a renewal.
Yeah, it's a review.
So unless you've got the skills of a Ferengi, you're not going to be able to negotiate your way out of this. I don't think they do have the skills of the Ferengi. I've heard trade negotiators say they don't want to represent the UK because their job is based on their success rate, and we've seen what
they had
have been like.
Just to give you an example, they had one of the best negotiators. He was actually a British guy who was working for the European Union. He offered his services during the negotiations for the TCA between the EU and the UK. And the Brexiteers said, no, we don't want him because he's a Remainer. So he was refused. He said, I'm going to work for you. I don't know if he said he'd work for free, but he said, I will, this is a guy that the EU was using as a negotiator. So somebody with a massive amount of ability.
Inside knowledge.
And inside knowledge and everything. And he could have been used, but he was rejected. So they put in charge somebody like David Davis, who didn't know one end of a pen from the other. Like it's
turn up with a paper in bed.
Although I have raised that before, and somebody said that this was because he did actually, but he had left it behind in another office when they did the photo shoot. I don't know. That's one of the arguments.
That's one of David Davis' arguments.
Maybe, but if the EU is investing huge amounts in AI, in electric vehicles, and the US as well, and China, then you need to be part of one of those. And you can't be a member of the United States. Britain can't be a member of the United States. It can't be a part of China. So it makes sense to be part of the EU.
You can either go two routes. You go free trade and you go luxury goods and services, or you go protectionist and you rebuild your industry and you have it all internalized. And both seem horrendous ideas. And the Brexiteers are like...
Britain is not Switzerland. This is the thing. Or Singapore. This is, it's a massive economy. It's a massive country. This is the thing that really frustrates me about the Brexiteers. They were like, yeah, we can be like Switzerland. But no, you don't know what Switzerland is like if you're comparing Britain to Switzerland. Or we can be like Norway. The economy in Norway is completely different. And also the approach to the exportation of energy and stuff like that is completely different. So the politics is different. The economy is different. But people... Brexiteers in particular look at Switzerland, they're really rich. Look at Norway, they're really rich. We can be like that. Not understanding the country themselves or the relationship they have with the EU.
You can see that in the cultural difference just within education. Education is one of our greatest resources. Youth population is one of our greatest resources. And I think it comes back to that class thing. Teachers try hard. They don't get the resources that they need. And I think the Tories just look at it as like, well, they'll rise to the top if they do, whether or not we put those resources in.
What's happening with the RAC? It's gone off the radar, but there are schools.
It has, hasn't it?
But the schools are still crumbling.
Well, to be fair, there's so much crazy news on at the moment.
Yeah,
like the Tory conference was nuts. It was unhinged over and over again. It was unhinged and nonsensical. I mean, no one was turning up to their conference. That was a talking point. Did you see the interviews where they were asking people about relationships they had? As soon as they announced they were a Tory, people dumped them as friends and partners.
No, I didn't see that.
There were quite a few people being interviewed about that, saying how lonely it was to be a Conservative. It's like, well, isn't that a hint?
Yes. I'm being really horrible to everyone around me and nobody likes me. Or I'm supporting a regime that's really horrible to people and nobody likes me. Why is that happening?
Crazy, isn't it?
I don't know if you saw the interview with the young guys. Some of them look like Boris Johnson clones. Maybe Boris was, getting it about. But
what do you mean, maybe?
But one of them, he came up with, he was like, I can't vote Labour because they're going to, they're not going to look after young people because young people can't get homes and they can't get jobs and they can't. And the interviewer, I think it was from the News Agents podcast, he was like, yeah, but the Tories have been in power for the last 13 years. And he said, yeah, but the pandemic, it was the pandemic's fault.
I'm going to actually say that this issue's really taken place, I think, since it's either 1947 or 57. I think it's the Country and Land Act, where you see this complete decline in house building in the UK, and it's never recovered. And I mean, unless Labour come out and say, we're going to push out 3D printers and set a massive target and we're going to run it as a government, I don't see it happening. But I don't think they've got the finances to do that. It's one of the reasons why they did the private oil exploration. It would have made sense if you're going to do that, and I don't agree with it, but if you're going to do that, it would make sense for the state to do it, and then you could pump all the money into a sovereign wealth fund, like they have in Norway. This is one of the reasons Norway's rich. Small population, huge amounts of natural resources, and someone had the bright idea of building a sovereign wealth fund. And we haven't done that. You can argue over whether or not it would have been successful.
Do you know that in Norway, petrol and diesel cars are more expensive than electric cars?
Yes.
Because of the tax. They put a huge amount of tax on them. So it's cheaper to buy an electric car. But they produce a huge amount of oil, which they sell. So they, as you said, they've created this sovereign wealth fund so that when the oil runs out or when it becomes no longer feasible, well, they have a rainy day fund and they can...
That's what they had with COVID.
Yeah.
We had to borrow. They just took it from the sovereign wealth fund, from my understanding. So they didn't have to borrow. That's what they're in credit. If you look at we're in debt. They're in credit, which is also it is a basic business. You've got cash, you loan it out, you get the interest rate back, and you can do it through the sovereign wealth fund or through the government. Over here, it's like, no, got to be always in debt. We don't have credit because that means we've taxed too much. It's like, no, use that money to then alleviate problems in the future. Like you can look at it historically. I think Athens had it. Like they had excess gold for a rainy day fund, which I think, if you sold it like that, people would go for.
Yeah, and then during the Ukraine war, when Europe was trying to wean itself off Russian oil and gas, it was going to Norway and saying, Norway, can you give us some excess? And they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. We'll charge you a bit for it. And then, unfortunately for the UK, because they were outside, they had to join the queue. behind the EU. While if it was a member, then it would have been able to take advantage of that as well.
That was in the OBR report as well, actually, about gas and saying we need to wean ourselves off it. But then it comes back to this protectionist versus free trade. So the Brexiteers are like, oh, we'll just go free trade and get it in from all over the world. And it's like, well, what if the world says no? What if one section of the world goes, right, we know that we give you 40% Ukraine. We're going to cut it off unless you give us a better trade deal. What are you going to do? Where's your deck of cards now? Where's your ace in the sleeve? Speaking of charges, you've seen the charges that are taking place with Trump and the pillow guy.
I heard about Trump, but I haven't seen the pillow guy. What is that? He's a political strategist for the Republican Party or something, is he?
I think that's a stretch. He's a Republican.
But he advertised, like, I don't know very much about him, but I know that he runs a pillow company, and he advertised, like, it's a very American thing where the owner of the company or the CEO will do the advertising to be like, I'm the owner of and it's a way of creating this sort of trust between the company and the consumer. But it's really corny, but it's a real American thing. No offense to any Americans watching this, but it would play really weird, I think, in Europe if you had something like that. Maybe apart from IKEA.
Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs, maybe. But I think it's a little bit... But anyway, tell us about the pillow guy.
So he's a his story is fascinating. He was a crack and heroin addict and now a multi-millionaire, all from selling pillows. And he has claimed that people approached him over the elections being rigged and provided him with evidence, which he's been claiming for, 4 years, that he can provide that evidence, and has never actually shown it. He even had a conference where he was like, this is the evidence. And a load of analysts were looking over it and like, there's nothing here. He was showing coding, and they were looking through the coding and they're like, there's nothing in the coding that shows that there was any fraud. I don't understand what you're talking about. And he's been a backer of Trump, and there's lots of evidence to show that he's been into the White House and talked to Trump directly whilst he was president. Big backer, big financial backer and everything. And obviously gone down this route that the elections were rigged. Well, he's now gone bankrupt, and we know that because he's announced it, that in court that he can't afford his lawyers anymore. He's got no more money. But he turned around and claimed that his lawyers would work for him for free. And the lawyers are like, what the fuck are you talking about?
All the lawyers we have for My Pillow and myself in the lawsuits with the lawfare with Dominion and Smartmatic, they just filed in federal court that to drop us as our attorneys, and this comes from the lawfare basically, and from the media, the attacks on My Pillow, what American Express did. Just devastating our credit, and we have to. I can't pay the lawyers. We can't pay. There's no money left to pay them.
Isn't it? It's like when Trump was putting out requests for donations. Like, he claims, I'm a billionaire. Before he became president, he was like, I can't be corrupted because I'm a billionaire. And then, he's now asking for money from his supporters to help pay his legal fees. Like, I know lawyers are expensive, but surely if you're a billionaire, you can afford them.
But hasn't he lost the case in New York, hasn't he?
I haven't been following it because I'm just waiting for him to be put in prison, and then we can go, okay, now let's move on. Because it just seems to be an endless saga. And unfortunately, his support is increasing. That's the worrying thing about it.
I can't see it increasing beyond a certain point. Do you know what I mean? I can't see him winning. Not at this stage.
I don't know.
He's just been hammered single time.
But
he'll have his core. I don't think the core numbers
No.
But he won't get the swing. And you have to have the swing votes to be able to win as president. That's what you need.
But what do people generally think of Biden at the moment? Are they happy with what he's doing?
I think Bill Maher really summed it up quite well when he was like, you've got a geriatric and an insane person. Who do you pick? It's like, wow, America, like, you've got 367 million people and those are your two presidential candidates. Ron DeSantis is growing, but Trump won't meet him in the debates, won't turn up. Because Trump's going, I don't need to. I only use it as a tool, which is fair enough. I go, okay, politically, that makes a lot of sense. You can also turn around and go, you still got to be elected through the Republican Party. So it depends on how well the Republican Party members take to the fact that he hasn't turned up for one of the debates. I mean, I think he's going to have to do one debate just to make sure he gets over the line. But I've got a funny feeling he won't, and they'll just turn up and people will vote for him.
Yeah.
Because the Republican Party have done. It's really interesting, actually. I hadn't thought about this, but the Republican Party have been taken over by Trump, and it looks like Conservatives have been taken over by UKIPers or Faragists.
Yeah.
Is that a word now? Have we just created a new word? Faragists.
I think so.
But he's in a lot of trouble. And he came out. The judge is the one to make a decision. He came out on TV. He's done this twice as well. He came out on TV and called him corrupt. And you're like, you've got to get him on side. You're slacking him off.
But wasn't there a gag order on him? And then within minutes, he breached it.
Yeah. Calling him corrupt. So there was something before that, slagging off the jury, I think it was, the judicial system and the courts. And then he came out again after being told not to.
But is he nuts, or does he just think that this is a political strategy and it will work in some way?
I think he's nuts, and he thinks it'll work in some way. I think it's both. I don't see.
But also, I think a big problem with people like him is he surrounds himself with people who agree with him, people who are grifters, who know that if I attach myself to this bandwagon, I can make some money out of it. So if you're an advisor to Trump, you're not going to tell him, actually, you shouldn't do that. You say, yeah, continue down that road, because as long as, it'll all come crashing down, but at least I've made some money in the meanwhile. I think this is the problem. And he surrounds himself with people who just say, yes, sir. And they're giving him really bad advice. But I still have this fear that he's going to win because people, and I keep saying this, it's not a vote for Trump, it's a vote against Biden. So I don't know what the general public think about Biden at the moment. And there's also this fear, I have this fear of nostalgia. People have this sort of nostalgia because if you look at why did Trump lose, it was because of COVID and because of his handling of COVID. I think that was the main reason. People didn't really care about the corruption. People didn't care about the economy that much. It was about COVID. And he was like, this guy is not dealing with it correctly. We need somebody serious. This is a serious pandemic. And that's gone now.
Which is strange because he was ahead of the curve. He was saying, right, we're banning all flights from China. And then just sat on his ass, from what I can tell. And didn't move quick enough, and then just threw it over to the States. And it's like, right, so you're in charge. You've thrown it in the States. Fine. We can argue over that with the Constitution. It's the 9th Amendment, rights of the states. If it's not in the Constitution, then it's their rights. And you go, okay, in that situation, great. But it also means their success is your successful failure. Yeah. So if they fail, you're going to get it in the neck. Yeah, you're the one that gave it to them.
Yeah, and then he was just blaming the states, and then he was blaming the public, and then he was blaming the Democrats, and he was blaming. So he was like a Tory, blaming everyone but himself. But the public were like, you need to do something. You need to lead, and he wasn't leading. And I think it wasn't so much that people came out in droves for Biden. It's like, we don't want Trump anymore, and that's my fear with what will happen at the next election. I hope I'm wrong, but I have this fear that turnout will be low, and the only people who will turn out are the headbangers, and they'll be the ones who will vote for Donald Trump.
I don't think so. I think Biden will win. That's my prediction. I'm happy to predict that at the moment, unless there's a huge controversial moment. So if he has a Mitch McConnell moment and just goes dead on Mike, there's a lot of mixing up stuff. Trump's done the same.
Yeah.
Like in the past and recently. So both of them seem to get a little bit lost.
So
and you go, okay, so that's sort of equaled out. You can see Biden's definitely aged, and you can see that in his mobility, but it's all the same with Trump. I mean,
in China, we also announced $250 billion worth in trade investment deals that will create jobs in the United States. From China, I flew to the city of Da Nang in Vietnam.
The water thing? I don't understand what that was. But Biden's been less controversial. And there's that whole thing of the greasy pole. You eventually are going to slip off and you're not going to stay on there forever. And you can see that with Trump. He kept hitting different sections of the swing vote and annoying them, or saying something controversial, or doing something outrageous. And eventually it just sliced away support, because everyone was also going, has he done an economic benefit? Sort of did towards the end, But the deregulation always comes back to haunt you, because when you deregulate too much, people do really stupid stuff, which ends up causing a national outrage.
Yeah.
It's no different here. You and I were talking about housing earlier. In Norway, you can't rent out your house until it's inspected by the government to make sure the standards are high. Why can't we have that in the UK?
Sovereignty or something.
Sovereignty of my house, and I have the right to have rats inside, and they can, if they don't like it, they can choose somewhere else. Of course, they can't. I think there was a statement the other day saying it's like.
But the free market people would say, or the libertarians in the Conservative Party would say, well, if people don't like the house, they can go and find another one. Let the market decide.
That's really interesting, because obviously that works if you've got an overabundance of housing.
Yes.
Because then it forces the standards up. But when you've got a shortage, it doesn't work. But the interesting thing is we've got a shortage of workers, and now they don't like that either. And they're all complaining because they're all getting more money, and they're able to negotiate more money. But of course, that's not keeping up with inflation, which is another problem. But it's interesting. They're never happy. And no one's ever happy in either situation within this system. If you've got too much, someone's losing out. You've got too little, a lot more people are losing out. And they'd rather have the too little situation, from what I can tell. But I think Trump's done, which is a positive note. And I think the Tory party are done. What do you think? Are the Tory party done if they go for the UKIP? Or they have gone UKIP?
Yeah, unless something dramatic happens between now and the next election, I think the Tories are toast. I keep saying it's people are voting either for the Tories or against the Tories, and we saw it in the by-election recently. They lost their deposit. The recent by-elections, apart from ULEZ, they lost all the other seats. So they don't really have a hope, and unless something dramatic happens, and even the public are turning off on the people are not watching the conferences anymore. They're just saying, look, it's just boring, and it's not connecting with us.
It was amazing to see that at the conference, wasn't it? So many empty seats.
Yeah.
On that cheerful note,
bye-bye.
Bye.
Tune in next week for another exciting story from the files of Police Squad.
So Iceland is in the Atlantic and the capital is Reykjavik. Is the Australian system both conservative and UKIP or conservative?
No, can you say that again? I'm lost.